Today on episode 114 of Rail Talk, we welcome Jockey Club Chairman Everett Dobson to chat about the state of the industry. Look forward to a super holiday weekend of racing and discuss the NYRA versus NYTHA loggerheads about race dates in 2026 and beyond. I'm Joe Bianca. I'm an ownership advisor at West Point Thoroughbreds. You can hear I'm a little bit under the weather, but I'm energized because this is my favorite time of the year. Thanksgiving week, food, football, family. Already went to a couple of Friendsgivings. And just to clarify for all the guys who were sniping at us over the weekend on Twitter, a friend is someone who voluntarily hangs out with you and enjoys your company.
Well, I consider you a friend, Joe. So thank you for putting that definition out there. Jonathan Green, general manager of DJ Stable. And Joe, you mentioned the big F. No, not that one. Football. Well, my alma mater, Lehigh University. I know those things are never confused with top football.
Like what? They have a football team?
We when I was there, we were the Engineers, and now we're the Mountain Hawks because that's a lot more fierce than Engineers. But anyway, I digress. Lehigh is fourth in the country in FCS rankings, and not only has a home game, but has a first round bye in the all important FCS playoffs. The first time that we've had a bye and a home game since like the early 80s, Joe. That's what football means to Lehigh University.
Are you going to go to any of the games?
No.
Okay, that's what I figured. But shout out to Lehigh, the biggest splash they've made since CJ McCollum.
That's right. The famous basketball player who he is one of three people in the Communications Journalism Hall of Fame.
Wow.
You're
one of the other ones,
because
right?
I'm one of the other ones. Yes, that's right. Primarily,
who's the third?
Primarily because of this podcast. Oh, some guy named Marty Barron, who was the the head of the Boston Globe and owns the rights to Spotlight. And that movie. Some nobody like him. But no, it's CJ McCollum, Marty Barron, and then John Green. I do have a tile though on the wall.
Love it. That's a good 3-on-3 basketball team too.
It wouldn't be bad. I'd be able to coach.
Hawks.
The opinions expressed on Rail Talk are those of hosts Joe Bianca and John Green and do not reflect those of anybody we work with or work for.
Rail Talk is sponsored by Facing Tipton. Shout out to the whole team at Facing Tipton. Finally get a little bit of a break from the nonstop action that we saw all year. Obviously, it was a record year for the people at Facing, and we appreciate them. We love doing the 100th show up there at Saratoga. That was a blast. Appreciate them hosting us, and just want to give a tip of the hat to everybody who's, everybody in that organization has played some part in that massive success at every sale, from the Saratoga sale to the Night of the Stars to the digital sales. And that brings me to the last official sale of the year for Facing Tipton, which is the December digital sale, December 4th through the 9th. So that's and the week after Thanksgiving. So you no excuses not to get involved. You want a horse for 2026, a turnkey horse who's in training, ready to run, or even some other, opportunities in terms of brood mares, in terms of weanlings. There's a little bit of something for everybody at those digital sales. They grow every single month, and that's for good reason. This is the future of the industry, and Facing is the leader in that future. And then the January digital sale will be January 15th through the 20th. You can enter now. Go to digital.facingtipton.com to learn more. And happy Thanksgiving to everybody at Facing. Love you guys. This is an exciting week of racing. It's probably like the last big week or two of racing for the year before we kind of hibernate a little bit until later in the Gulfstream Championship meet. This is the big Thanksgiving weekend cards at Churchill Downs. And also the Hollywood Derby and the Matriarch are going to be run this weekend on the West Coast out at Del Mar. So last call for some of those big graded stakes wins for 2025. You want to, boost somebody's resume. And that maybe suggests to me why Explora is shipping in to Churchill Downs to run in the Goldenrod over the weekend. Now, Explora ran second to us in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. I don't know, maybe they think that they still have a shot to win the championship because she did have the grade 2 win in the Oak Leaf. She was second in the Del Mar Debutante, second in the Breeders' Cup. So maybe they think if she wins this grade 2 at Churchill, they have a chance to steal that Eclipse Award away from us and, potentially the people at with Sci-Fair. That's interesting to me. Because I feel like not enough people take advantage of this weekend, honestly. Like, I get that the Clark isn't a grade 1 anymore. But if you have a horse in any kind of division that's still up for grabs, there's a lot of money and a lot of great prestige on the line this weekend at Churchill Downs and at Del Mar. So I would say, like, not to put your horse away for the winner just yet, but it's a full field in the Goldenrod, full field in the Kentucky, and not as full of a field in the Kentucky Jockey Club, because I think of the presence of Further Ado. Now, Further Ado, if you remember, was the horse that won by 20 lengths at Keeneland. And I think that was, we looked at it, and that was like the biggest win in a 2-turn maiden special weight in the history of Keeneland. What does he do for an encore? Because his first 2 races were nothing special. He ran 5th first time out, ran 3rd after that, and then all of a sudden just exploded when stretched out to 2 turns at Keeneland. You know, you got a nice horse for Ken Ramsey named Dr. Kapoor, who's interesting, by McKinsey, stretching out to 2 turns. I don't know. The 2-year-old racing is what kind of caught my eye from the weekend at Churchill, John.
Well, and like you said, the clock hasn't stopped yet as far as these horses' careers. And, should they be put away or should they, push forward to try to get a G2 next to their name before the end of the year? But Joe, these races have turned out to be stepping stones, for major horses that have gone on into their 3-year-old campaigns. Most of the time, I think it's from later developing horses that, miss obviously the Keeneland April meet, miss Saratoga. Maybe they just start during the end of Churchill going into the Keeneland October meet, and they're just kind of ramping up their racing career, which is why they're using these races kind of as a springboard for their 3-year-old campaigns. But I'm curious to see how these races play out. I think that there's a lot of good competition in here, like you mentioned, and identified a couple. I wanted to also mention the Mrs. Revere. The grade 2 also coming out this weekend. I love the fact that it's like the Friday or Saturday after Thanksgiving. I'm sure the people who work there don't enjoy the fact that they don't get that full long weekend, but you look at this race and recently purchased Lush Lips, who won the Queen Elizabeth, the grade 1, was second in the Del Mar Oaks, and was previously campaigned by Donica O'Brien and our friends over at Medallion Racing. She went through the Keeneland November sale for $3.7 million just a few weeks ago. And Joe, I can tell you from having horses in sales, in the brick and mortar sale, and then going to a new program and looking to race, it is not an easy thing to accomplish. They have to do something that they're not used to doing. They haven't done usually since the time they were yearlings or maybe 2-year-olds if they went through a 2-year-old sale. And that is get out of training, have to walk and then sit, and then walk and then sit, and then walk and then sit, and basically get out of their training vibe and routine. And then after only being in a new barn literally for 3 weeks, have to look to step up and run in a grade 2. That is not easy. And from a handicapping standpoint, to be 7-5 in that race, when you have other horses in there that are pretty salty older horses, and really looking to get a grade 2 before they have to run against older horses next year or until they get retired, to go to the breeding shed. It is not an easy ask. And I was surprised that there'd be that quick of a turnaround for a $3.7 million horse. Maybe they see it as an opportunity. I don't know. It's not going to be an easy one, though, especially pulling the 1 hole, in this race.
Just to clarify, it's for 3-year-old fillies, but there are a lot of seasoned 3-year-old fillies in there. Yeah, that's an interesting point, and I think that's why so many people are like pointing towards the digital sales. Obviously, you're not going to do that with a horse that's going to sell for that much. But one of the advantages of the digital sales is that you don't have to pull them out of training.
Right.
You basically just ship them, and they're already in their routine. So yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't really thought about that. She does look like the horse to beat clearly on paper, but I think she'd be shorter than that. She'll probably be like 3-5.
She will. She'll be the favorite. Is what I'm saying. But I think there's a whole card there because it's not easy. Now I'm not saying that Brandon Walsh and his crew can't do it. But I think it's a bigger ask than what they're anticipating it to be. Theoretically or technically she has won from the 1 hole. She did it in the Queen Elizabeth for sure. But it's not going to be easy. And you as a handicapper looking for value, this would be a bet against for me because she's probably going to be 3-5.
Interesting in the Clark, another interesting betting race. Like this is pretty wide open. You don't have any like the headliners of the handicap division as you'd imagine, but this is a wide open race. I mean, you got First Mission coming. He's already. I'm already seeing advertisements for him for his stud career next year, but they're going to take one more shot with him in the Clark. I mean, outside of him, you got Hit Show, who's a pretty nice horse, Gosger, who was a good third, I thought, in the Fayette against older horses for the first time. Top 3 from the Fayette. Run back Chunk of Gold had a monster win at Keeneland last time. Yeah, well, barn favorite or show favorite, $2,500 yearling buy at Facing Tipped in October. He had a huge breakout win at Kentucky last time, or to Keeneland last time out. 103 buyer, 1 by 8 1/4 lengths. Rattle and Roll is in here, but the most interesting horse to me is on the outside in Magnitude. Mm-hmm. We talked about him a little bit over the course of the year because other than the big 3. He's the only one to really have those kind of blowout big figure wins on his resume this year amongst the 3-year-olds. He had the 43-1 upset in the Risen Star where he won by almost 10 lengths, got a 108 buyer. He had the big win in the Iowa Derby, disappointed in the Travers, but I thought he ran awesome in the Pennsylvania Derby when he was second to Baeza, 102 buyer. But the way he did it, the way he settled off the pace, because he had been a speed horse heretofore. Like that was where his big wins came when he got loose on the lead. The fact that he got denied the lead and still made that brave run in between horses and coming up the inside to get second in that race. In a older horse division next year that I don't think is going to, I know journalism's coming back, but is most likely not going to have sovereignty. And I think that, maybe it has Baeza, but I think there are going to be some opportunities for horses to step up in that division, and Magnitude's the one I have my eye on. And I think, to me, he's the horse to beat in here. I know he's 9-2. I know he's a 3-year-old, but if he runs his good race, I don't think any of these older horses are going to beat him. So that's the one I have my eye on for the weekend, for the most part.
No, I think you're right about Magnitude. I think with him, if you look at his pattern, he must be a difficult horse to keep sound because they run him 3 times, then he's off for a little bit. Then they run him 4 times, then he's off for a while. Then they run him 3 times, and now he's been off for another 8 weeks. So I wonder if, I'm not saying he's an unsound horse, but I'm wondering if maybe he's just got a little hitch that they have to deal with every now and then to try to take care of. And you mentioned Gosger, who I think is an interesting horse in this race also, especially adding blinkers. It looks like they want to get him to be able to be a little closer to the front end of some of these races, which that racing style should help him in a race like this, because you look at Magnitude is going to be, coming from, close to it, maybe sitting just off it, and Rattle and Roll coming from way off it as the main contenders. Chunk of Gold will be close to the lead, but I'm curious to see how these 3-year-olds kind of step up. Joe, interestingly enough, you didn't mention the most popular horse in the United States right now, as far as a horse going from 3 to 4 years old.
Who's that? Sandman?
Sandman, come on, dude.
He has having his first breeze back on Wednesday.
He is, I know. And working backwards from some of the races at Oaklawn.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm looking forward to that because I think he needed a reset, man. Like, obviously he had all that success as a 2-year-old into 3-year-old, and then ran okay in the Derby, ran well in the Preakness, and then it just kind of fell off a cliff from there. And he just needed a step back. He had the arthroscopic surgery, and now he's ready to rock and roll again. And he always had that pedigree and that look to me of being better as an older horse. Mm-hmm. But it's like the gift and the curse of winning big races early in your 3-year-old year. You're going to go to the Derby, you're going to go to the Preakness, and now he gets a chance to, kind of refocus. And I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do in 2026. And there's no better place to get some R&R than Mark Cassie's farm in Ocala. So we're looking forward to that. One thing that we have to mention, and I don't want to laugh about it because it could have been tragic, but I'm sure you all have seen the video circulating of the ambulance almost running into the field at Evangeline Downs. And if you haven't seen it, hopefully we can put the video up. But if you watch the video and you haven't seen it, the ambulance is not going to come from where you think it is. No. Usually it's on the outside of the horses, and you think maybe they took like a too sharp of a turn or something. Right. No, the ambulance was coming towards the horses up the rail. And I have yet to see a statement about this. I've yet to see an explanation. I've yet to see really any news stories getting to the bottom of this. Maybe I haven't, maybe I missed them, but I have not seen them from the major publications. This seems like it should be a big ass story. And I'm just staggered at this. And also, like, all the people that spent all weekend yelling at us, I go to the Evangeline Downs Twitter handle and I see their posts. Nothing, no replies, nothing. Where is all that vitriol for the track that almost just had a fucking ambulance run over a field of horses? Maybe train your fire on that instead of two guys speaking positively on something, which I know drives you nerds crazy. John, like, this was stunning to me. How does this happen?
Well, number one, it was quarter horse racing and not thoroughbred racing. So let's make sure that we distance ourselves from this issue, because God knows we have enough of them here. That's number one. Number two, Joe, this was a field of stake horses. I mean, it wasn't like it was not that it mattered if any horse, was in the way, but like, this is the cream of the crop for that division down there at Evangeline Downs. And thankfully, as you mentioned, nobody got hurt. But what was the ambulance doing on the inner rail, number one, and going clockwise when the horses are going counterclockwise, number two? And why in God's green earth at the moment that the gate opened, were they like, hey, oh shit, we got to get behind this field in case something bad happens? Like what kind of communication kerfuffle was going on there where they decided at that moment to be like, oh shit, we're supposed to be behind the horses instead of, where we are right now? And why didn't they just go counterclockwise around them to be behind the horses? But anyway, it's kind of like the situation where, you never know of an offensive lineman until they commit a hold. Like, nobody ever goes, oh, I wonder how far back the ambulance is going to be in this race, or where they're coming from, until there's a major screw up like this. But thankfully, Joe, nobody got hurt. First and foremost, none of the athletes whatsoever, the horses nor the jockeys. The jockeys had the wherewithal to be like, nope, I better get out of the way, and it was a no contest at that point. But yeah, like, where are the heads that are rolling from this, from the stewards, all the way down to whoever the two people were in the ambulance at the time that decided that they were going to go on a joyride in the middle of a stake race?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many weird things about this story. And I did look it up that the Pollock Report actually did do a story yesterday or Sunday about it. So at least someone was trying to get to the bottom of it. But I mean, there really were I don't know who's in charge, honestly, at Evangeline Downs, but someone's got to answer for something. Rob Toole, who was the announcer, who didn't seem to notice it when it actually happened somehow, at least gave some quotes to the Pollock Report about what happened. And I want to give a hat tip to the jockeys who had to react very quickly to get around that ambulance, because it wasn't as if the ambulance was standing there. It was moving. It was moving towards the field.
Yeah.
And we almost gave the epic performance of the week to those jockeys, but we didn't, because we didn't want to make light of this at all, because it's a very serious situation. But that was pretty incredible that they were able to maneuver the horses around that ambulance and nobody got hurt. Because I got news for you. If that ambulance had hit a horse, what do you think is leading to CBS Evening News tonight?
Yeah, exactly.
And now, maybe it's a coincidence. It's a non-HISA state. It's kind of the Wild West in Louisiana in general. I know this was a quarter horse race and not a thoroughbred race, but Jesus Christ, guys! Like, every time I think I've seen it all in this business, I see something like that, and I'm like, nope, it can get even stupider, John.
Exactly. You know what it kind of reminded me of? The only thing I'd ever seen something like that before was, remember when on Preakness Day, it was like 30 years ago, when
the guy tried to punch Artax?
Yeah. When the guy stumbled out of the infield and was super drunk, and first he olayed like a matador, a couple of the horses, and then he took a swing at Artax.
Yep.
And you go, why? Like, what? And at least he was drunk. I mean,
and he wasn't an employee of the fucking track.
And he wasn't driving a vehicle the wrong way on a racetrack. Anyway,
Yeah.
you're right. We seriously, give a lot of credit to those riders because, they were going 40 miles an hour in one direction and the ambulance was probably going 40 miles an hour in the other direction. And it was close quarters. It wasn't like, in our races where, okay, it's a mile and an eighth and things kind of, start to thin out and horses are running 2 by 2 most of the way. No. This was like 8 horses in a charge, down the backstretch.
Yeah. And like I said, I got to see some answers. Like I know it's a joke of a track and it's one of those tracks that I don't think the horse welfare is probably all that great and the slot revenue props it up, but there's got to be someone in charge that some of you can call to figure out what the fuck happened here and how we make sure it never happens again. Because again, like I said, that was a new one and we've seen a lot in racing. Rail Talk is sponsored by Epic Insurance Brokers, one of the nation's top retail insurance brokers. They have expertise across key lines of insurance like property and casualty, employee benefits, and unique specialty insurance. Our guy, our homie, Chris Moore, leads Epic's equine specialty practice. He's an expert in this business. He lives and breathes it. You see him at the sales, at the races. He owns horses himself. If you see his Twitter account, posts about horses all the time, like a little too much, frankly, but that's why we love Chris, and that's why he's one of the best people, I would say the best person in the business to talk to about your insurance situation. It can be pretty confusing, a lot of different things. You got your workers' comp, you got your farm insurance, your equine mortality policies. If you want to get all of that into one policy, if you want to unify, if you want to have the same renewal date for all of them, Chris is your guy to get all that mess in order. You can call him up at 317-650-4519. You can text him as well. Start the conversation. We appreciate Chris and Epic, and we were really excited to see what he can do for the Rail Talk listeners. I know some of you have already taken avail of that opportunity to talk to Chris. If you got any kind of insurance in the business and you feel like there's maybe something missing or something that you could do better, start the conversation with Chris and Epic. We appreciate you guys. And that leads us to this week's
Epic Performance of the Week.
And this week's Epic Performance of the Week is the first hat trick that we're giving out, and we might as well start naming this award after this guy. Flavien Prat is again the Epic Performance of the Week. We don't like to go back to the same well too often, but the guy is just riding lights out. He won 5 races on Sunday at Aqueduct, giving him 14 altogether throughout the week. And shout out to Flavien, who's going to also brave the New York winter. He's going to stay in New York through the Aqueduct meet over the winter. It's not an easy meet to do in terms of like the conditions, but the guy's going to win like 8 races a card throughout the meet if he keeps up at this clip. And I've already waxed poetic about Flavien enough, but he's always in the right spot. Almost never gets into a jackpot. Strong finisher, good on pace horses, good from off the pace. I mean, John, Nick was on last time when we gave it to him. I want to hear your thoughts about what makes Flavien so good.
Well, I think he's just the go-to rider in New York, and it seems like every winter there's one person that is like the magnetic draw that you need to either put on your horses or you need to bet on, almost regardless of what the odds are on those horses. And a couple of years ago, obviously, it was Pick Your Ortiz brother. Last year, it was Dylan Davis. And now, obviously, this year, with some of the jockeys migrating out of New York for the wintertime, it looks like it's Pratt, and rightfully so. And the only thing he's giving up by staying in New York in the wintertime is those lucrative Derby preps. But I got a sneaky suspicion that he's going to be riding out of town every now and then to make sure that he cements his position with one of those top contenders. But he's going to be rolling as long as he can stay healthy. He is going to be rolling in it, Joe. And that is not breaking any news. But what is newsworthy is the fact that he is our first trifecta triple header winner of this Epic Performance of the Week award.
Rail Talk is sponsored by The Green Group, the #1 accounting firm in the horse business. No other CPA firm knows the horse industry like they do. Len and DJ have over 200 horses. Saw them win a race over the weekend at Gulfstream when all the West Indians were screaming at the TV. I was like, I know those silks. So shout out to DJ for notching another win. They've got over 2,600 victories and counting. And The Green Group has close to 1,000 clients in the horse business because they make the money and save them taxes. As always, there's an exclusive offer for listeners of Rail Talk like you. If you call Len up at what's that number, Michael Agresta?
732-634-5100. Green Group.
Swinging to the sweet sounds of the Green Group jingle on this Monday morning. Love to hear it. Or go to greenco.com to learn how Len and the Green Group can help you and your horse business. You don't take it from me, though. Take it from someone who runs a very large farm in which he has like freaking 30, 40 of our yearlings and does an unbelievable job. I'm going to be talking to him actually this week for the West Point Partners to get an update on all the babies. Doc Iseman. And then the following weekend, we're doing our little yearling showcase with the West Point Partners down at Doc Iseman's farm. So I'm going to be in sunny Ocala in December. Can't wait. Shout out to Doc, one of the best in the business. And I'm so glad that he hooked up with another one of the best in the business, Len Green and the Green Group. Let's hear from Doc.
Len Green, as the commander of the ship, is an exceptionally talented guy. You know, he understands the taxes inside and out. He understands ways to maximize your tax deductions that are still within the realm of, possibility, legality. He does a great job. He knows horses, he knows taxes, he's a good man, he's a good person. Highest recommendation that I could give goes to him. He understands the racehorse industry, he understands the horse business, and he understands how to integrate that into the tax code. And there's very few people that have his width and depth of knowledge on these subjects. I strongly recommend the Green Group to anybody, especially in the horse business, that's interested in maximizing their tax situation.
Thank you, Doc. He and I and John go back all the way to the old show, and he was on when we were at the OBS April sale, and he told that story of the squirrel running up the guy's leg and freaking out the horse and getting loose. But that's a rare occurrence. Doc is on top of it all the time, him and his team down at the farm. And I'm so appreciative that he and Len and the Green Group are together and are helping each other out. Some of our favorite people in the business. Shout out to Len and the Green Group. Been an unbelievable year. Give them a holler. Get started on those 2025 taxes. There's no better time to do it than now before the rush starts in early 2026. Go to greenco.com or call them up at 732-634-5100. We're so thrilled to bring this next guest to the Rail Talk studio to talk about a variety of industry issues. He is the recently elected chairman of the Jockey Club, Everett Dobson. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, guys. Good to be here.
We're so glad to have you. Obviously, we're gonna discuss a wide variety of issues, as I mentioned, but I wanted to start with what your motivation was to run for chairman of the Jockey Club. Like, you've obviously been involved in racing for a little while now, but what was like the impetus for you to get involved at a leadership level?
Well, it started with a conversation that I had with several of the stewards that wanted to inquire about my willingness to be considered for the position, and I reluctantly agreed after many conversations with several of the stewards at the time. So it was a long process. I really searched the whole industry for somebody that I felt would do a better job and had the capabilities of doing it. And every time I would turn around, they would insist that I needed to step in. So there you go. Here I am.
I mean, it's a very, very modest and humble thing to say, but there had to be a reason. Like, you've shown things to enough people that they wanted you to be that voice, to have that position. Like, what are some of the things that, now going into it, you would think that you would like to change or shake up?
Well, I don't know that I would characterize it like that. I felt like I had the ability, experience, if you will, around my history with, a variety of sports, including the NBA. I've been in this industry, our industry, for a good some 30 plus years. So I felt like I could bring the level of knowledge and experience and hopefully relationships that at the end of the day are going to prove valuable. Beyond that, I mean, the things that I believe in are what you guys talk about a lot. We need to improve the sport. We need to grow the sport. There are a lot of initiatives that I laid out at the Jockey Club Roundtable that we're actively pursuing and working on daily. So it's all about making our sport the best it can be, and I'm a big believer in it. And so that was the motivation. And here we go.
And one of the things that you mentioned, not only in the roundtable, but also in your first 100 days interview, was the need to have more fans, to have higher rate of fan engagement, to be more transparent, and just to be more engaging, to be more welcoming for people who are not currently active in the industry or kind of just tangentially active, to have them want to come in. What are some of the initiatives, and what's the timetable on those initiatives that you're going to implement on that front?
Well, the fan engagement is an ongoing initiative that will, as I said in the podcast recently, the 100-day podcast, as you call it, the NBA is a good example. They don't have a timeline about getting to an endpoint on fan engagement. It's perpetual, and that's the way I think about it. The task and the methods by which we go achieve that fan engagement are varied and different, and we're embarking down that path right now. But I can't make a case for this sport long term unless we increase the fans that come into the sport, both on the betting side and just general fans that want to come watch our majestic, incredibly exciting sport up close and personal. That's a non-starter for me. We just have to go in that direction.
Well, and on the fan side, I think we've kind of caught lightning in a bottle with Griffin Johnson this past year, and is bringing so many more young 20-something eyes to the sport than I've seen, certainly in my lifetime covering and watching racing. But the question I think that comes after that is, how do we capture that and turn it into revenue, turn it into betting handle, turn it into ownership down the line? So my question to you would be, what's the next step? How do we build upon the success and the attention that Griffin has given us the past year or so?
Oh, it's like a lot of things in the world of business and any organization. It's one task at a time, one conversation at a time. You will see it when you see ratings improve, when you see handle improve, when you see the foal crop start to improve. But how you get there is just a whole lot of blocking and tackling and down in the trenches, daily activities that make it happen. So, it's hard to say, oh, here's the silver bullet, let's go do that. And suddenly the sport's, growing beyond recognition. It's just not the way the world works. We have to just concentrate on the fundamentals, execute and deliver daily, and that's a background I'm familiar with, and so that's how I think about it.
Right. And Everett, just going back to the previous podcast, where you were laying out some of your initiatives, one of the things that you spoke about was HISA's performance, more so in the budget standpoint than the actual, is everything going smoothly and everything that they wanted to achieve, are they recognizing and achieving? Can we talk a little bit about, you said that you were concerned about their budget, especially with regard to the costs for the smaller racetracks. Now, you're considered a small city owner, yet you were champions. So how do we make things better for the smaller tracks, the smaller venues, so that way they can stay compliant and make HISA work to the best of its ability?
Yeah, I think of HISA as it is today, which is challenging for those tracks. We've had a dispute amongst the industry as to how to bill and pay for HISA. That's going to get resolved. HISA is going to do a new payment methodology beginning 1/1 of 26. Additionally, we've got several of our larger states and they're in tracks that aren't participating today. So we're not fully at scale. Right. Is what I would say. So the HISA of the future should be at scale. We should have the per start methodology implemented. Beyond that, we've got to right size the cost structure of this industry. And we've got a mandate from Congress through HISA that is very clear. So there are some things that HISA can't compromise on. So leadership in this sport needs to collaborate. We need to understand the nuances of the cost structure. We need to be prepared to just assist in every way we can. Mm-hmm. But HISA today is different than HISA should be in the future. And I'll be honest with you, I was probably the most disappointed I've been in the job since I started on it a while back, was not getting a Supreme Court decision. Mm-hmm. That provides so much more clarity. We will eventually get clarity around that, but I urge everybody to be patient. It's going to happen. HYSA will improve. The cost will get in line, and this sport will begin to grow as a result.
You mentioned the fall crop before. I read your open letter to the industry about understanding the fall crop decline. The peak was in 1986 at 51,000. We're down to 17,300 for the projected fall crop. What are some things that we can do about that? Like, obviously it's a macro issue. It takes a lot of cooperation. It takes a lot of support, at several different levels. What are some of the things that you guys discuss that you think can start to at least somewhat reverse that trend?
Well, the first order of business probably is to educate. We started that a little bit with a meeting we had in Louisville just last week, where we invited in, we as in Toba and the Jockey Club, invited in as many of the regional executive directors and breeders, the leadership around the country from the various regional markets. And we started the conversation. Through that, I learned that there's some collaboration already underway in like Maryland and Virginia, where they can band together and improve their competitive position in the game. And so Kentucky is such a strong force. They're also a force that we can learn from. What has Kentucky done that has allowed them to be such a strong leader and financial influence in this sport? Well, they focused on, the things that are going to drive the purses. Purses are going to drive interest. Purses are going to drive ownership. Purses are ultimately going to drive breeders to want to breed. I came away from the conference in Louisville with a strong belief that the regional markets that have states that operate racetracks and breeding operations, they're going to have a very difficult time doing it as an island. They need to band together, in my view, with other states and surrounding areas, work on their breeding program, work on how they can co-opt the state purses. The state bred purses. So I think that's inevitable. And I think those conversations are going to start. So that's probably as big an issue as anything. But we really need leadership at a local level. And my belief is the Jockey Club should assist, can assist, and will be hopefully perceived as a valuable asset to those states.
And Everett, just with the fall crop in mind, one of the things that we've discussed at great detail and great length is artificial insemination. And I know in the past that's been taboo, as far as the Kentucky farm owners. But, now with the science the way it is and with expenses to bring in outside mares, is there more of an appetite? Are you seeing and hearing that people are more willing to consider artificial insemination as opposed to live breeding that we have here in this industry?
It's funny. At the very conference, I had two people come up to me and ask that very question. Well, when can we have that conversation?
Right.
And so, you're right. It is it's like a religious thing to this sport almost. It's gone back for over 100 years. Let me point out one thing. That's not a United States question. It's a global question. Mm-hmm. It's the foundation that this sport has been built upon around the globe. It's almost inconceivable to think that we could go out and decide that the United States is going to be an island on that subject, because our thoroughbreds would immediately not be recognized around the world. So it's a very challenging subject. There's some pros and cons, obviously. But I also understand the realities of it. It would be very, very difficult and very challenging to implement right now.
Yeah. With the world, you say that they wouldn't recognize our thoroughbreds, but it would also open up tremendous markets for their stallions as well. Is there a conversation to be had just in the simplicity that, we could have Kingman foals here or, and they could have into mischiefs easily in Japan?
Well, there's definitely a conversation. Is it the highest priority for this Jockey Club and this chairman right now? Probably not. Fair. I'm looking at the things that I talked about. That are probably a higher priority: aftercare, foal crop, growing handle, growing the sport. All of those things are front and center right now. Could AI perhaps assist in that? Undoubtedly, in some areas, in some ways, as you identified. But I'm going to pick the battles that I can successfully, go down and perform and execute.
Yeah, I mean, and we have made a lot of positive strides in the last 5 years, I think, in terms of safety and integrity. So I do feel like at least we're on the right path with those things. And obviously it's something that needs to be defended and supported along the way. But one path that I think is very, very treacherous right now is the handle and the CAW influence in the pools. This is something that is chasing away a lot of regular bettors, causing a lot of people to reduce their handle. But we're in a tough spot now because the CAWs have become such a percentage of the pool that if you ban them entirely, there's going to be major, major hits to the purse account, and it's not going to be as lucrative a sport for owners. So how do you balance that? Like, I know you guys are more involved on the breeding side, but as a leader in this industry, how do we balance that at this point? How do we protect the regular bettor without chasing away some of the major chunks of the handle that we currently have?
Very good question. Well, you guys invited me on this show as the head of the Jockey Club, but I've also been a trustee at Keeneland for now going on 6 years. And Keeneland has a very important 2 months of the year. We have a very important race meet at Keeneland, April and October, and so I'm somewhat familiar with the dynamics around the CAW world, and I had to give Keeneland, and in particular Gatewood Bell, a lot of credit on educating us on, what it is we should be thinking about with regard to the CAW world. And it is very complex. It's not easy. To your point, we've kind of gone down this path. We're having to live with it. But there are strategies to deploy, and Keeneland in particular has taken some of those strategies to help, in effect, push back on the CAWs to create a more level playing field. To eliminate them, you're right, would be catastrophic for the near-term success of the businesses that own and operate racetracks. But it's really it's a business decision at the racetrack level. They can, there's not a racetrack in this country that doesn't have the authority to disallow that method of gambling, method of betting on their product. So it's a business decision that every track's got to make. We can't live without the retail bettor. So we have to look to them and say, what is it we can do to level the playing field? And once you do that, I think there's tweaks along the way that are going to continue to help. There's obviously a lawsuit that's out there that again, with lawsuits sometimes provide that clarity that we need. I wish there was no lawsuit, but there is, and it'll work its way through, and we'll see what the outcome is. But it's an issue, and it's an ever-growing issue that needs to be dealt with. But again, the most important element of this is the racetracks making good business decisions around that.
Right. Everett, I just want to pick your brain on something. Obviously, you come in to our sport with a 30-year history, like you mentioned, and you've been in the NBA on the ownership side, and you recognize that they have to make some collective decisions to make the industry better. But you've also mentioned, I don't think that the thoroughbred industry needs a commissioner. Why don't you think we need to have a central power position? And can both sides find common ground with working together, whether it's aftercare or as Joe mentioned, the CAWs or something where we can get everyone kind of on the same page for one topic and then hopefully build from there. I know it's a faceted question, but you're the man in the seat, so I figure you're the best person to ask.
Well, first of all, I think it would be wonderful we had more centralized authority in the U.S. thoroughbred racing and breeding industry. We don't. It's very. It would be, and again, I told you I was very keen on picking my battles, trying to create a commissioner position that in turn has the authority that and the respect that are necessary for that position. That's a big challenge. What I've chosen to do, and I think this is the proper path right now, is to collaborate with the organizations that have a seat at the table. Mm-hmm. So you've seen me. I mean, I've had the conversations with Toba. We're collaborating on the foal crop issue. We had the conference in Louisville. We are actually collaborating with Pat Cummings on aftercare as we speak. We've engaged with Pat and formed a working group to work on. I think what we're working on. Well, I would describe it as a fairly comprehensive, long-term solution for aftercare. So things can get done. We got 100% bonus depreciation done. Right. I said this recently. I make no excuses because we don't have a commissioner. That's not the way I'm approaching. I don't approach life that way, and I'm not going to approach this job. But it does require that we have to use the power of persuasion sometimes. I'm a big believer that some of the most important voices in this sport are the racetrack owners. Mm-hmm. Through the racetrack owners, and as I described, their business decisions, they can improve handle, they can improve fan engagement. We can have a much better ecosystem around the sport when the racetracks are successful. And so, again, one of my initiatives, one of my strong beliefs, what can we do to make our racetracks more successful and more profitable at the same time? So, yeah, there's work to do, but do we need it? Do we need a centralized authority? Not in my opinion. I think we can get there without it.
Yeah, well, it takes unification and collaboration, which is something this industry has historically not been great at, but I'm seeing more and more of it over the last several years, which is exciting to see. All right, last question from me. You are an owner of the Oklahoma City Thunder, the defending champion Oklahoma City Thunder. So congrats on that, first of all. They're killing it again this year. To me, I'm interested in hearing about the business of running the Thunder because I think this is probably the most competent organization in the NBA. You had the rise with Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook and James Harden. That kind of fizzled at some point, but it seemed immediately you guys were able to turn it around with the draft picks and find a superstar and get back to the top of the game. How behind the scenes, how hard was that? And how many people did it take to kind of make that pivot? And are there any lessons that you've learned from owning the Thunder that we can apply to this industry?
Thunder, or frankly any organization, I've never seen a successful organization that didn't have really good people doing their jobs really well. And so if you ask me to pinpoint what makes the Thunder, our leadership both at the ownership level, but also our general manager, Sam Presti, is, in my view, the best of the best in this world. So it all starts with leadership. A culture has been developed at the Oklahoma City Thunder. Sam Presti, I think, said it best when after the championship, he said, our ownership group gives me a competitive advantage. But that's also saying we have a culture that allows him to go execute and perform to the best of his ability. And so any organization, it starts with the people, the tone, the culture. And so that's a big part of, frankly, that's what I hopefully can bring to, the world of the thoroughbred. I've got to identify the very best people for this sport and put them in the right position when I have an opportunity to.
Yep. Everett, my last question is a straightforward one. That is, with the first 100 days of you being in office, has there been any surprises so far, good or bad?
If there's been any surprises, it's the level of support I've received from just so many people in the sport. I understand there's some negativity around the Jockey Club and the club and all of that. I get that. But I also don't let that interfere with what I think is some really exciting things we're working on in the sport. I can't tell you how many people have asked to volunteer. Let me help. What can I do? Bring me in. And so that to me was the most encouraging thing of all. So and like I said, we're taking people up on that, and Pat Cummings being a good example. He's obviously, and Mike's paying for his work. And so I applaud Mike for letting us take advantage of that. And so there's other conversations, other other working groups that have been formed. We're working on just all of those. Again, as I describe it, it's in the trenches work. This is not, it's not success by a press release doesn't work. I mean, we've got to go in and roll up our sleeves, get to work, do the things that are going to make the difference over the long term.
For sure. No, I think that's well put. And we're all on the same team. It's not to say that we shouldn't criticize each other or criticize the people in power, but we're all on the same team, and the collaboration is key, as you said, Everett. Everett Dobson, this was fun, man. Thanks so much for coming on and chatting with us.
My pleasure. Thank you, guys. Keep up the good work.
We will.
Appreciate it.
See you soon. Thank you.
Rail Talk is sponsored by TaylorMade. Shout out to the Taylor team for an unbelievable year on the sales front and the Stallion Shed. But there was a new initiative that they announced shortly after we recorded last week, aiming to lift state-bred programs. So this is basically, it's called the State-Bred Initiative Program, and it allows approved mares to be bred to one of 4 stallions at their 2026 stud fee. Angel of Empire, Dr. Shival, Idol, and Tacitus. The stud fee will then be waived once the foal is reported as being born outside Kentucky, and all the supporting documentation for state bred registration is submitted. So it's a really exciting thing I always love this. I always love people that recognize that the health of the industry in Kentucky is dependent upon the health of the industry all across the country and all the other state-bred programs. So I give a tip of the cap to the TaylorMade team. Always good at marketing, always good at thinking outside the box. John, what's your reaction to this news?
Well, I think that especially when you look at the regional breeding markets, and there is an opportunity, there is a gap to fill in New York with regard to stallions that are up here. So it's great that they're recognizing that they can kind of mine some value out of the regional programs, not just New York, but anything outside of Kentucky. And they're doing it with 4 of their younger stallions to give them an opportunity to have some runners. And you look at horses that migrate from outside of Kentucky into Kentucky, and there's pretty much one every year that does it. So they're betting that they're going to have one of their 4 horses that are in the program, that at least one of them is going to step up and be that kind of a horse, and basically already have the horse domiciled in Kentucky. So I think they're, once, as usual, TaylorMade is 1 or 2 steps ahead of the rest of the industry with regard to any portion of what you're talking about: sales, breeding, marketing, everything in between.
And this is super exciting for smaller breeders and those regional programs. You can learn more, view like the full list of rules, and start thinking about what mares you might want to send to those stallions at TaylorMadeFarm.com. So we're doing something we don't usually do. We're bringing a guest in specifically to talk about one topic that we wanted to discuss, and we thought he would be smarter about it than we are. We'll see if that comes to be. He's the vice president of the NYTHA board. Aron Yagoda, welcome to the show.
Thanks, guys, for having me. Big fan. Long time listener.
Yes.
Wow.
Second time caller.
What was that first thing you said? A big
Cup
fan?
show.
A big fan? We don't usually hear from big fans.
Well, you gave me a free hat.
Aron's easily won over, as many of us are, with merch. Let's talk about the story. So NYRA and NYTHA are kind of at an impasse right now over the number of racing dates to be run in 2026. NYRA appears to want, I'm quoting from the Matt Haggerty story in the DRF, according to the testimonies, NYRA appears to want to run approximately 10 fewer race dates next year, while horsemen are adamant that racing dates not be cut, even for the short term. It says, while the difference appears meager, both sides prepared talking points to justify their positions in front of the committees. This was in Albany. This was a big meeting in front of the assembly. Aron, break it down for us. Why are the horsemen opposed to a temporary, it seems, reduction in racing days?
Well, with there was a big hearing last week with Assemblywoman Carrie Warner, who's a big horse racing advocate and fan for us and does a really good job promoting racing in the state. Actually, it started out a lot different. NYRA first came to us with a proposal of 179 days. Moved it to 184. Now they're at 190. We started at 220 something, knowing that we weren't going to get anywhere near that. Now we're down to 200. So the difference is 10 days. And some people think it's a minuscule number, but when they built the new Belmont, they said they wanted to run approximately, the legislators said they'd like to run at least what they ran at the last year of Aqueduct, which our calendar was 200. Now, we never really run those 200 because we have cancellation. So 200 this year is only going to be 195. We had 200 on the calendar for 25. We're only going to be able to run 195. And a lot of the horsemen think that racing dates versus racing opportunities, which NYRA was talking about, and I can go either way on that. Racing opportunities are great. Racing dates are also great. A lot of people think that racing dates are something that you are guaranteed, where there will be cancellations, and racing opportunities are sometimes promises. We'd like to run 10 on the weekends, but we only could card 8. So you lose those opportunities. But around the end of the year, we'd like to run anywhere right around 1,800 races. And the whole thing came to the difference of the 10 days. I can go over the 10 days difference right now. Was last March, we only raced 3 days a week, and we're willing to do that again this year. But they wanted to go 3 days a week in February. That's 3 out of the 10 days so far. The other 4 days happened to happen in Saratoga. They wanted to start on Friday the 10th for the regular meet, not the 4th of July weekend. And we'd like to start on the 9th, which is just one day, a Thursday. And then they didn't want to run 3 days in Wednesdays in July. They only wanted to run Thursday through Sunday, which some of us are okay, some aren't. But, NYTHA and with Tina, we represent all the horsemen. And some of the bigger trainers, the larger trainers, didn't want to give up those Wednesdays in Saratoga. Now, if we run those Wednesdays in Saratoga is going to be pretty taxed. And the reason why they wanted to cut it for 2 reasons. One, because they have the 4 days from the July, that they're going to run the July 4th weekend. They also are going to be in Saratoga for the last time as a one-off for the Belmont Stakes Festival. Mm-hmm. And then if they keep those extra 3 Wednesdays in Saratoga, and now we have to go till September 7th because Labor Day is late this year, that's a big tax on the Saratoga grass courses. And I believe that NYRA, with great intentions, doesn't believe that the grass course can handle that. But the bigger trainers want to do that. So we had to add those back as well. And then there was 2 other days. There was the weekend of Easter. We don't run on Easter Sunday. So we wanted to, they just wanted to run Friday, Saturday. We'd like to run Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, make that a 3-day week. And then there was 1 day in May and 1 day in July, which can go either way. The 1 day in July is that opening on a Thursday. And that's where the 10-day difference is. But a lot of people don't want to go below a number starting with 2, because remember, right. I'm from the era when 80s and 90s were great. We used to run all 52 weeks a year, 6 days a week, right? We only used to not run on Tuesdays and not on Christmas. And now we're at the point we're running 200 days, and there's 365 days in a year. We're taking 165 days off. So basically, I think going forward, and it's a new world and everything changes, that if we started a calendar with a template of 40 weeks at 4 days, that's 160, and 8 weeks at 5 days during Saratoga, that's 40. That puts us at 200 days a year. And give or take where holidays fall, we get anywhere between 197 to 202 for the next few years. And that's why we're not at 190.
Right. And Aron, what kind of leverage do the horsemen have against management?
So we'd like to be dance partners. We don't want to be us versus them. And we're trying to get rid of that. Dave O'Rourke, when I speak to him, he hates that us versus them. And I don't really like it either. We need to help each other out. And in terms of the way the legislator, I've been told by our attorney and our lobbyist, is that we have control over the winter dates. Now and they need the horsemen to sign off on those dates. We're supposed to run 90 days a year at Aqueduct from December to April. We haven't run 90 days in forever, but we've been signing off on that. So we don't want to keep cutting and cutting and cutting. And it really cuts into the people that are here year round, right? The hard knocking small operations, like Linda's my trainer. She's a big operation she's the large trainer in the wintertime. But there's small guys that need the winter racing to get through, and we're really caring about them. And then you also have to care about the larger trainers. So it's very hard to appease,
right.
Everybody.
Yeah. And just as a quick question, sorry, Joe, you've actually walked through the new Belmont.
Yes.
What is that looking like, and what should we expect as horsemen and horse players?
Well, I don't see the final thing. I went through the shell of Belmont, but I was told that, and you also read about it, that it's going to be a soft opening when they come back from Saratoga. So when we end Saratoga this year on the September 7th, we're hoping that we're going to have a soft opening of Belmont on Friday the 18th, not the 17th. We're going to try to open on a Friday, but it's going to be a soft opening, whatever that means. And I've also been told that only the first and second floor is going to be ready, not the third and fourth floor. So, we're still going to try that. I thought maybe, Aqueduct's done when we leave Aqueduct for the last time, but you only get one chance to make a first impression. So I hope that it's not a construction site when people come there, and we tell people that, please don't lean against the wall. The paint is still wet. So I'm hoping that, but it does look beautiful, and it's going to be a state-of-the-art facility with 4 new courses and all that. And we want it to work. We just want opportunities to run year-round. We're going to be going to a Tapeta for all winter with only one surface. I was a big believer in always having 2 surfaces, grass and turf in the summertime with Tapeta as the option, for off the grass, and then dirt and Tapeta for the wintertime. But we can't keep the dirt course going because you can't treat it. Once you treat it with salt and everything, you can no longer not de-winterize it. So
how are the horsemen on that right now? Because I've heard some kind of split arguments about the move to synthetic. Like some people are in favor of it, and a lot of people I think are opposed to it. Where are you guys at on that? Because the reason I bring it up is I think if NYRA is willing to bump the race dates back up in 2027, I think that they're mainly concerned about drawing enough horses to run enough races on these cards. And I think part of the reason for that is in the winter, there's just not enough horses to run on a lot of these cards. I think the synthetic will help that. But where are the horsemen on this?
Everyone's all over the place. In fact, when the first 2027 calendar for NYRA, they were still going to keep 3 days a week. So listen, it's an unknown. No one likes change, right? No one likes change but a wet baby, right? And other people that don't mind change are, as long as it's not affecting them. So it's a change. It's an unknown. Where are we going with that? Some people think we're going to promote mediocrity. We're going to keep, bad New York bred grass horses going all winter, but that would help field size. Field size are good for the bettors, right? A lot of people everywhere else, they're like, what do I do with my good dirt horse? You try him on the synthetic and then you go somewhere else, right? They say that Mark Cassie's coming with a full barn, but then they say some of the bigger guys are taking their dirt horses and are not going to try it on the pit. So who knows what's going to happen, right? We keep about 1,200 horses, according to the racing office, in New York in the wintertime. So hopefully that helps. But it's an unknown, and it depends who you ask, and everyone has their own difference of opinion. I mean, John's great to ask. He races everywhere. John has but not everybody has the talent, the wherewithal, and the ability to move their horses around like a chess.
And the good looks.
And the good looks to move their horses around like a chess piece, right? He moves them around. He shops them around for stakes play and does a great job.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, John, I'll pose that question to you. Like, if you have a synthetic / turf horse with Mark at Woodbine, would you be more likely to run in New York with that horse as opposed to going down to Florida?
That's a great question. I think for our program personally, the really top horses that compete in the graded stake races at Woodbine, whether it's turf or Tapeta, will not see a New York barn during the wintertime. We'll give them the proper time off and then bring them back. What'll probably happen is, because we run 2-turn horses for the most part, especially up in Canada, the whole first month of the meet up at Woodbine are sprint onlys. It's 6 furlongs or less, because not the entire track hasn't thawed, quite frankly. So you'll probably see us run a couple, those horses in March in New York on the all weather surface, and then transfer them up once they open up the entire racetrack. But we're kind of an anomaly. I don't know if there's a lot of programs that are like us that send a huge regiment up to Canada, and then and for those surfaces. I think you're probably going to see a lot of claiming horses that'll come to New York, a lot of allowance horses that'll come to New York, but I don't personally think that you're going to see the top tier Tapeta or turf horses. And Aaron, you tell me this. I mean, are there going to be graded stake races on the Tapeta in New York? Because there hasn't been anywhere, basically, other than the year-round Tapeta tracks.
Well, that's a good question for Joe as well. After December 6th, which is going to be this year, December 6th is the Cigar Mile Day, then there's no more graded stakes for a while in New York. So it's really, I'm sure they'll have a few, but the real question is the Gotham next year might, or not next year, when we go to Tapeta, is going to be run on the Tapeta, right? And and it's not, it's what's going to happen to those kind of prep races? Are people not going to bring their New York? The Wood Memorial is still going to be on the dirt, but all the other pre-race preps will be on the Tapeta. Are people going to come here and switch? Like, I thought it was great if we can get back on the main track for that, because we'd be the only classic that actually preps on the same track as the classic, right? Churchill doesn't have a Kentucky Derby prep except for the mile, the couple of days before the Derby mile, right? Whatever that. Yeah. And the Preakness, it has the Tessio, but that's about it. None of the major preps. We would have the Wood Memorial prepping with the Gotham and on that same circuit.
Yeah.
But that's not going to happen either. So it's a lot of unknowns. And like I said, it's hard to keep everybody happy. And NYTHA has 6,000 members.
You wouldn't necessarily, if the Gotham is run, when is it run now? I don't even remember.
It's usually like the first weekend in March, usually.
In March, right? Yeah. Okay. So you're running up against the big $1 million, the Jeff Ruby stake at Turfway. So you're probably not going to get the top Tapeta horses. But if you moved it back, like at one point, wasn't the Gotham earlier, or am I just smoking?
The Gotham used to be like when Easy Goer won it. It was like 2 weeks before the Wood, But now, if you say your horse ran within 2 weeks, they call HISA on you.
Yeah, exactly.
But turn yourself in.
Would that be part of it, where maybe they move the Gotham up? They switch the Gotham with, I know they have a series of races that are running, but would they move it up in the calendar in order to try to get those kind of horses? I don't know. I don't know if it's the big.
Then you run into the Wood Memorial.
Right.
Yeah. Aaron, I have one last question for you. So just to be clear, the Belmont is supposed to open in September 2026. Is next spring going to be the last ever races run at Aqueduct?
Yeah, when we leave Aqueduct for when we go to Saratoga for the July 4th weekend, we're going to run right now. As of now, we're going to have the Belmont Stakes Festival, come back to Aqueduct in 26, and then when we go to July 4th for Saratoga, never come back to Aqueduct again.
Wow.
So the month of June.
If you want to think about things that I'm stealing, you should come with me the last day of Aqueduct.
I can't wait. Yeah. I
can't wait.
The month of June is going to be sponsored by Black & Decker, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Exactly. We're gonna get some, because I got some good memorabilia out there.
Yeah, it's great.
So.
It's so sad,
Seriously, what has happened to that stuff? Like, what's happening to the signs and the paintings and the
a lot with Belmont, they preserved it and put it in storage. So they said they're going to redo it. And David Rourke was very nice with Andrew Offerman. They let me take down the Peb mural there, and they preserved that to go back up at Belmont too, because they couldn't get it off originally, and they were very nice about letting us find somebody, an art historian, to able to take it off the wall. Even calling Peb and getting advice on how to do it. So they were really great about that.
No doubt. And so it's a museum. At Belmont more so, but Aqueduct as well.
But Joe, you like to gamble. Do you think less is more? I mean, are we a death? We don't want to be a death by 1,000 cuts either, right? I mean, at one point you grow the bottom line by cutting. You can make the bottom line look better by cutting, but then you don't grow the industry. So what's your, as a gambler, what do you want?
I mean, I've said for a while that the industry needs contraction, and I think it's happening. I think the problem to me is more so that the wrong tracks are closing. Like, we lost Arlington, we lost Hollywood Park, and I think Fairgrounds is probably not long for this world. Monmouth might be in trouble. I think the wrong tracks are closing, but I do think overall, I love to support New York racing, but the product in the winter is unbettable. It just is completely unbettable, and I take my handle dollars elsewhere. And I would personally like to see slightly fewer racing dates across the calendar, not just New York.
Right. So, going back, because I've been in racing my whole life, and the 80s and 90s was my heyday, and I was getting on today, and I pulled up the Whitney from 1988. They only carted 3 horses in the whole race.
That's crazy.
Right? Well, yeah, but look who the 2 of the 3 are.
I understand they're great, but we talked about, and here's the 1990 Alabama. It was also a field of 3. So,
right.
So, we talk about the historian. When you watch Citation, and that's way before I was born, and they didn't beat 20 horses out of the Kentucky Derby. They were running against 8 or 9, and 4 of them were Calumets, right? You're
talking about great horses. I'm talking about the day-to-day product.
Yeah, that too. And it just changes everywhere. Listen, Saratoga was the darling, and now it's now it's the darling, but in the 60s it was the drain. And Aqueduct was the darling, and now Aqueduct's the drain. So what do they say? Bob Dylan says these times are a-changing.
They sure are.
But I don't know.
It's a great way to wrap. Thanks, Aaron. Thanks for the time, and thanks for the insight. We could talk to you for hours,
and we have.
But we have. That's what I was saying. We've already talked to you for hours, so we'll keep the listeners the segment for the listeners short. But always great insight, man. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Have a great day.
All right, so that's going to do it for episode 114 of Rail Talk. This was a star-studded show, as it always is when John and I are on camera. But also, thank you to Everett Dobson and Aron Yagoda for stopping by. Shout out to our excellent producer, Patty Wolf, and we're such big fans as well, our associate producers, Julia Gresta and Nathan Wilkinson. We love all you guys. We love you for tuning in. If you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe to the show on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Have an awesome, safe, and happy Thanksgiving, and we'll see you next week back here on Rail Talk.